Hi there, Chevy owners. Today in your 2022 Chevrolet Express van, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Redarc's Tow-Pro Elite Trailer Brake Controller. And this is what our brake controller looks like when it's installed. You will receive a mounting button for a knockout that you can use if you have any knockouts. Our vehicle didn't, but you can still mount it in the dash. And one of the big differences you're going to notice here between a traditional brake controller is this is all the footprint that we've got here in our vehicle. Unlike those big boxes that hang down underneath, where you're potentially hitting your legs on it, they're harder to see, harder to activate the manual slide. You get the opportunity to mount this in a much more discreet location. The actual main unit is hidden behind the dash, and then all of our interfaces with the small button here. With our button, we can do all the things that we would expect to be able to do with a brake controller. You have your power output here. You can go between 0, which is no output. I'm going to go ahead and hit the brake there, up to 10, which is the maximum output. And if you hold down the button, that will trigger like your manual slide. And you can see that it does kind of slightly ramp it up. The color goes from that blue to red in a couple of different stages there, so it's not an immediate on. Since you don't have the ability to feather it like you do a traditional brake controller, they kind of ramp it for you there. Now there is another mode on this. This is the blue mode, which is proportional mode. This is where you would want to use for most situations. But there's also a user control mode on here that will allow you to operate more similarly to like a time delay brake controller would. That way, regardless of inertia input, it will still send power to the back, and it kind of ramps it up just like the manual button does there, kind of a slow ramp. Well, it's kind of a quick ramp, actually, that it applies to the back. And that's useful for off-road applications. So we're going to go ahead and switch it over to that mode. We're going to turn the knob all the way to 0, hold the brake, double tap the knob. That now is changed to green, and that means that we're in that user control mode. And again, the main difference is we don't use inertia inputs anymore when you're in this mode. And the reason why that's useful for off-roading is, let's just say you're in kind of a muddy area, you hit the brakes. Well, if you're in a proportional mode and you hit the brakes and your brakes lock up and you start to slide, your inertia sensor is not really going to detect that you're slowing down. So it's not going to send very much brake power to the back brakes. In this mode though, since it ignores that inertia input, if we do hit the brakes and our vehicle starts to slide, it's still going to send that to the back and apply those brakes at whatever power you've got it set to here to help you stop in those slippery, more off-road conditions. So we're going to go ahead and turn it back to 0 and go back to our proportional mode. And that's kind of the basics here for the Redarc. It's just a very small footprint. The Tow-Pro Elite here is going to give you the 2 different modes. So if you're a Jeep guy or do a lot of off-roading, I would highly recommend this over the other Redarc module, which is the Tow-Pro Liberty. The two are similar, but the Liberty does not have the user control mode. And the other difference is the Liberty will only work with trailers up to 2 axles, whereas the Tow-Pro Elite here will work with trailers up to 3 axles. So for your big boys out there, it can handle it. Other than that though, they are quite similar to one another. The switch is a little bit smaller here on the Tow-Pro Elite, so if you have a particular area that you want to install it in, and space is definitely a premium behind some of these dash panels, the Elite might make the difference for it fitting in that area that you want over the Tow-Pro Liberty. But now that we've covered some of the features of it, let's head into the shop and show you how to get it installed. Now before we begin our installation, the first thing you're going to want to do is determine if you have factory wiring or not. If you have a factory 7-way at the back of your vehicle, there's a good chance that you do. And if you do, you would find it right here under the carpet. Just peel this piece back right here, and your wiring is actually just going to be taped here to this harness. Just rip that off of there, and that's where you'll find your wiring. And all the wiring is going to be labeled here on the sticker. It's a little hard to see, but it is going to be labeled there. Now if you do not have this wiring over here, or a 7-way at the back, you probably won't have that either, but if you don't have the wiring, then you'll need to use kit ETBC7 to make your installation. Since we've got the wiring, we're going to be wiring it directly to this. If you have no existing 4-way, you would also want to add a custom fit vehicle wiring harness to get all your lighting signals to work on that 7-way. Next, we're going to remove this panel out of the way so we can more easily get in there and install our components. So we're going to grab a 10mm socket and remove 2 bolts that holds this paneling on. There's one right down here, and there's one in a pretty similar location over here on the opposite side. After we've got both of those removed, we can go ahead and pull off our paneling here. It does just kind of pull off. Just work your way down. Try to pull near your connector so like it starts to flex, move your hand closer to the point where it's stuck. And just get those popped out of there, and then we'll set this off to the side. So that's gonna expose a whole lot of room to make our installation a lot easier. We're gonna mount our module right here, just to this mounting location here. There's a module that's already mounted there. We're gonna just use cable ties to attach it. You don't get any in your kit, so you will have to provide your own cable ties, but we do sell those here at eTrailer, so you can get some to use here. So I'm gonna pull the wiring down. The factory, or not the factory, but the Takantra wiring that was previously installed was located there, so we're just moving that kind of out of the way right now. So we're just setting that off to the side. Now we're gonna mount our module up here. So now we're gonna take our cable tie and we're gonna push it up behind the plastic paneling here. You might have to push forward on the module a little bit or pull out just a little bit to get it to want to clear, to slide up. There we go, we've got one slid through. Now we're gonna do the same thing, get another one slid through. Trying to get one on each side of this little mount tab there. There we go, that one slid through. Now we'll take our Redarc module, we're gonna put it like this with our big 4 connector towards the outside of the vehicle on the driver's side, and the smaller connector towards the middle. We can now take our cable ties, run those through the module, and then just kind of secure it in place with our cable tie there. We're gonna leave that one a little bit loose for now so I can get the other one started. All right. And now we can just snug it on down. All right, so we've got that on there like that. We are gonna use just one more cable tie just to help make the module a little bit more secure. We're gonna slide our cable tie through the bottom on one side and then back around the other side. And this will just help secure it to the middle to make it a little bit more stable. Now that we've got a cable tied on there that's nice and secure, you can just trim off the excess from your cable ties. Next, we're gonna mount up our button. Now there's 2 ways you can mount it. You can mount the button directly to your paneling wherever you'd like. If you're gonna do that, you'll wanna drill out a 10mm hole. That's the size for the nut here, because the collar of the nut needs to slide through the hole. 10mm is a little bit of a strange size here in the States, so you probably don't have a metric bit, but you would just wanna go up one size from a 3/8 bit. A 25/64 would work very well. And then we've got our small button adapter here. This comes in your kit. Now you don't have to use this if you don't want to. This is mainly designed to be used for knockout replacement. Some vehicles have factory like buttons, and sometimes there's one that's not used depending on the options on the vehicle, so you could potentially knock it out and this may fit in there. Now this is a universal one, so you know it may not line up with any knockouts on your vehicle. It just depends if this happens to be a similar design to what the manufacturer used on their vehicle. But we can drill out a hole and use this. That's what we're gonna do. We're actually gonna mount it right here, because if you look at our button, you can see it sticks back about an inch, maybe a little more than an inch behind the paneling, and we gotta have enough room back there for it to mount, and there's plenty of room there. If you reach your hand behind it, you can feel there's all kinds of space there for us to mount. So we're gonna use the button, because I think it's gonna end up with a cleaner look if we use our button there. So we're just gonna take and drill out a hole now. Now the hole size that you would wanna drill for this is a 1 inch. You could probably get away with a 5/16 hole and then maybe just a small file to clean up some of the small spots where there's kind of a little alignment spots. And we're probably gonna need to use a little file as well, but we're gonna be using a 1-inch hole saw to drill out right there. So now we're just getting centered between our holes here. That looks pretty good. And we'll drill it out. Now if you're using a hole saw, after I get up like this, I'll actually switch it to reverse. Since the plastic paneling, the blades will still cut in reverse really easily through this stuff, and it actually cuts a little bit cleaner on plastic. If you're cutting through anything else besides plastic, you wouldn't want to do this, but with plastic, And it just gives you a little bit of a cleaner hole there. Not a huge difference. And we're just gonna pull our bit off since we passed all the way through. We'll just slide it on out of there. We are still probably gonna take a razor knife to clean it up, but just helps to keep it from tearing as much as it can go in the other direction. So now we've got our hole cut. When we do our test fit in there, it slides in pretty nice, but down at the bottom we are hitting, so it's got those little alignment kind of grooves on it. And you can see that at the bottom where it juts out just a little bit. So we're gonna take our file now and just file that out. And you shouldn't need a whole lot of filing. It's plastic, so it should go pretty quick. So after you file a little bit, do a test fit. It looks like there is also a small notch at the top that we're likely gonna have to do too. Ooh, but that is a pretty good fit in there right there. I think we're probably good right there. That looks nice and flush. Maybe there's a small notch at the top. It does like I might need to put just a little tiny V groove there. So we'll grab our tool here and put just a little V groove up at the top. Check our fit. Oh, and that feels very good. It doesn't rotate or anything now. It is snapped in very nice flush finish look. And that's exactly what we're looking for right there. And that'll give us a really easy way to mount up our button. Now, if you do go with this option to use this mounting plate, instead of just mounting your button directly, you'll have a small sticker that comes in your kit. You won't use the sticker with this plate. If you were mounting the button directly, before you would screw your nut on, you would place a sticker around it. That would just make the LED light illuminate a little bit better so you could see it better. But this is a nice shiny reflective surface, so you're gonna get the same out of that. And there you can see that's the sticker that you would use if you don't use the mounting button. But since we're using that button, we're not gonna use the sticker. So we're gonna get ready to mount our button up there. I do recommend maybe grabbing your wiring. You might wanna plug it in first because it's pretty small and it's hard to see and work back there. So you might wanna plug this in and then mount the button. That's what we're gonna do. So we're undoing our wiring here. It does have two different ends, so only one end's gonna plug into the switch and then the other end's gonna plug into your module down there. The white end here is the side that plugs into our switch. The small little notch there lines up with this side of the switch, so the opposite of the circuit board. That'll plug in there. And we'll unscrew our little nut here. And when you mount this into the button up there, it does have a specific orientation it needs to go. The circuit board should go at the bottom, so the thicker part down low. And then just line that up in there. Your button might push out a little bit if you push too hard. And then we'll get our nut started on there. And it is just plastic, so you really don't want to go too crazy tightening that down. So once you got it hand tight, we're then just going to take a 12mm socket and just with our hand, just ever so slightly, just go a little bit tighter than what we can get by hand, and that's it. That'll lock it on there, make it nice and snug for you. Our button fits very well in there. Now we'll install our button on there. The button, first thing you'll want to do is just barely touch it on there and turn it all the way counterclockwise and then pull it back off. So we've got it all the way turned counterclockwise. We were just using some of the splines on the button to line up with those to turn it. And now that we're at full counterclockwise, that's the 0 position. So now we're going to take 0, put it towards the top, line it up with our button, and press it in place there. Now you should be able to go from 0 to 10. 10 being full clockwise, 0 being full counterclockwise. You also want to make sure that your button can be pressed. You want to hear that audible click. If you don't hear the click, then your nut's potentially cross-threaded or not tightened all the way down. I would recommend fully loosening the nut and then trying to reinstall it if that's the case. All right, with the rest of our module and stuff installed, we can go ahead and take care of our wiring here to our module. So we're going to take that factory wiring that we found, and there's going to be electrical tape on the end. You can peel it off or just cut them. I'm just going to cut them because we have plenty of wire length here, so we can just trim most of that off. Now you do want to be careful here. These wires are going to be live. At least the red wire with the white stripe, that is your battery circuit. So that one is live. Keep that guy away from the black wire. You can see it's a little bit longer You want to keep that distance away because that's ground. If those two touch, you're going to have a short. So we're gonna just kind of stretch those out there, strip them back. I'm gonna start with the power wire so we can get that one connected right away. So go ahead and strip it back. And then we're gonna crimp on a butt connector. Now butt connectors don't come included in your kit, but you can get some here at eTrailer. So we're gonna crimp it onto our power wire there, and that'll help protect it right away so it won't be an exposed circuit anymore. We'll go ahead and start hooking it up to our 4-way harness here though. The harness here, this comes with your Tow-Pro Elite. Your black is going to be your battery wire, and they're actually all labeled if you look at them. It says battery on it. Blue is brake output. White is ground. It says battery negative, which is ground. And then red is your brake input signal. So for your stoplight switch, your brake lights, that's going to be the red one. And again, they're all labeled right on there. So we know that the red with the white stripe over here is the power wire, because it says so right here on the sticker. A little hard to read, but it does say it on there. On the other side, it's even worse. So now we'll take our power circuit here, connect it to the power wire. There's a nice positive little sticker on there too to further help ensure you identify the correct wire. We'll crimp that on there. Now we're gonna strip back the rest. So the black wire here, this is our ground circuit. So we're gonna strip this one back. And this is an extremely small wire, so you may need a razor blade or something else to strip it. Our strippers aren't going to take care of it. What I was doing there was just using my cutters, and I was barely squeezing and pulling out to be able to do that. And we're going to crimp this on here. With these smaller wires in your butt connector, you do want to be careful not to crimp the butt connector over the sheathing of the wire. It actually needs to be on the exposed part that you just stripped. So just double check when you're crimping it, making sure you get the proper depth. If you don't, your system won't work. It just won't even power up at all. You gotta have power and ground. Our white wire's our ground wire. So we're gonna slide that in the other side, crimp it down. The blue wire here, the darker blue wire, is the brake output wire. That's going back to the 7-way. So we'll strip that back, connect there. This is going to connect to the blue wire from the harness that comes with your Redarc brake controller. All right, and then lastly, the small blue wire here with the white stripe is the brake output wire. That will connect to our red wire here. And now we'll grab our last circuit, which is the red one here. Slide that in there. And then crimp it down. So now we just need to plug our harness in. So I'm gonna kind of route it up just a little bit. Keep it away from our feet when we're trying to drive and stuff like that. So we're just gonna go above some of this factory wiring. We'll probably use a couple of cable ties to secure it. So that looks pretty good there. We'll cable tie it here after we've verified everything's working properly. We'll now plug it into our module there, right into the side. And at this point, you've got everything installed. Now, you really won't see anything yet on your controller because we don't have a trailer plugged in. So if we go back up to our button, you'll see here that our button is just dead. If you plug in a trailer, you're gonna get some feedback. I do believe if we push the button without a trailer plugged in, you get like a pulse. So there you go, you see that pulse there. So if you get that pulse, you know it's powered up. We're gonna go ahead and plug in our trailer simulator so that way we can get some more feedback from our knob. So here we've got our trailer simulator plugged in, and as soon as we plugged it in, you can see that it's now flashing between green with a quick flash of blue. That's indicating that it's all up and running. It now needs to be programmed so it can learn its position, because we can install this module in any orientation we want, and then as you drive it, it learns its position. You're only going to get this feedback here flashing to let you know whether or not it's programmed itself if you have a trailer plugged in. But if you don't have a trailer plugged in and you're driving the vehicle, it will still calibrate itself. You just won't get the feedback from the knob to know whether or not it's completed calibration. We can also test now with our simulator that we are going to be getting output from our brake controller, because the manual slide will still work. The output is dependent upon the number, so we're going to turn it all the way up to 10 so we get the max output and hit the button. And we can see there that it's operating our unit. So everything seems to be working. We're getting a nice output out from our brake controller. So At this point, we're gonna go ahead and put the interior back together, cable tie up any loose wiring, and then we'll head out on the road and get that programmed. So we've gone ahead and reinstalled our panels and cable tied up all our wiring. At this point, we're now gonna go do our drive to calibrate it. To calibrate it, you just wanna drive in a straight line, maybe get up to about 15 miles an hour and apply the brake. You're gonna have to repeat that up to 20 times, although I find in most cases you shouldn't need to do it that many times. So we're just gonna do this as much as possible. You wanna try to minimize your turns. And you'll notice that as we're driving, it's going to slowly become less green and more blue, and then eventually be a solid blue once it is fully programmed. So let's just take a quick look and see where we're at now. So we're at about 50% on for the blue and the green there. So we're about halfway done. And it looks like it just went solid blue. So it was about 8 times that it took us. Again, it can vary up to about 20 times. But once you get that solid blue, it is now fully calibrated, it knows its position, and we're ready to operate in our normal functions. And that completes our installation of Redarc's Tow-Pro Elite Trailer Brake Controller on our 2022 Chevrolet Express van.